Jannik Sinner is back. After more than 1 month away, he walked onto a grass court in London and beat the home favorite Cameron Norrie in straight sets. 6-3, 6-3, 2-0, clean, fast, convincing. It was his first match since the second round of the French Open back in late May, when he lost in a way nobody expected. Dizziness, exhaustion, cramping, late in the heat. A collapse that didn't look like tennis going wrong. It looked like a body shutting down in real time. So, when Sinner walked back onto a court today at the Giorgio Armani Tennis Classic, an exhibition with no ranking points and no trophy, the results still mattered more than exhibitions usually do. 6-3, 6-3, in roughly 30 minutes less than an hour combined. That's not a man easing back in carefully. That's a man closing the door on a question quickly, before anyone gets too much time to ask it. And the question was simple. Is the body okay now? Today's answer, on the surface, was yes. This win gives Sinner exactly the kind of momentum a champion wants heading into a title defense. He arrives at Wimbledon as the top seed, the defending champion, the man who has to walk back into the same tournament he won 1 year ago and prove it wasn't a single great 2 weeks. The championships begin on Monday, June 29. Sinner will open on center court, the first Italian man in the tournament's history to do that as defending champion. But here's what makes this particular win different from a normal warm-up. He didn't get this chance against just anyone, in just any conditions. London sat near 35 degrees Celsius today. Heavy. Still, the exact kind of heat that, 27 days ago in Paris, turned a 5-1 lead in the third set into a collapse that cost him the match. He won only 2 of the last 20 games that day. The opponent was ranked 56 in the world. The heat was the real opponent. So this wasn't really a tune-up match. It was a rehearsal for the exact conditions that broke him last time against a tour-tested grass court player in Norrie, a former Wimbledon semifinalist who knows exactly how to make a match physical if given the chance. Sinner didn't give him the chance. 3 breaks of serve. No long, draining rallies. No third set required. The match was basically decided before the heat had time to become a factor at all. That's worth sitting with for a second. Because there's a difference between recovering from something and simply not being tested by it yet. Today, Sinner controlled the terms. He dictated the rhythm, kept points short, served well enough that Norrie barely had looks at his service games. That's the version of Sinner that wins Wimbledon. Flat, heavy, first-strike tennis, the same game that dismantled Carlos Alcaraz in 4 sets in last year's final. But Alcaraz isn't here this time. A wrist injury has ruled him out entirely, removing the one player who's pushed Sinner to his absolute limit on this surface. Novak Djokovic remains the biggest name left in the draw, sitting well back in the betting at plus 400, while Sinner sits around minus 200 to win it all. On paper, every signal points the same direction. Top seed, defending champion, clearest possible draw. A statement win in brutal heat just 5 days before the tournament begins. A few courts away, Novak Djokovic was going through his own version of this afternoon, beating Karen Khachanov in his first grass match of the season. 2 former champions, both shaking off long absences, both auditing in the same heat on the same day, but only one of them had a recent collapse hanging over every shot. That's the context that turns an exhibition into something closer to a verdict, even if it isn't one yet. It's the kind of return that makes people stop worrying. And maybe that's exactly right. Maybe Paris really was just one bad afternoon, blown up by circumstance and a brutal opponent in the conditions. But there's still one thing today's scoreline can't tell us. It can't tell us what happens when the stakes are real again, when a match stretches past 2 quick sets, when the body is asked the same hard question it was asked in Paris, except this time with a Grand Slam title actually on the line. Today gave Sinner exactly what he needed heading into Wimbledon. Whether it gave him the real answer is still waiting for Monday. To understand what today actually proved, you have to go back to the afternoon that broke him. Court Philippe Chatrier, late May. 33 degrees Celsius, not record heat. Not the kind that makes headlines on its own. Sinner had won the first 2 sets in under 90 minutes, playing what looked like the cleanest tennis of his career. By the third set, he led 6-3, 6-2, 5-1. 1 game away. He was a single point away from walking off that court with a 2-set, 5-1 lead intact and a routine third-round date waiting for him. Then he served at 5-4, love 40. And something in him simply stopped working. He didn't lose his timing. He didn't lose his shot tolerance. What he lost was energy, the kind you can't fake your way through, the kind that doesn't respond to better footwork or smarter shot selection. He called for a medical timeout. Blood pressure checked. Sent back out. From that exact moment, Juan Manuel Cerundolo, ranked 56 in the world, won 18 of the next 20 games. 18 of 20. That number alone tells you this wasn't a slump. A slump is missing a few first serves, settling for one bad set. This was something closer to a body refusing to keep its agreement with its owner. Here's the part that actually matters for Wimbledon. Watch how Cerundolo dismantled him, tactically, once he sensed the shift. He didn't go for more pace. He didn't try to overpower a 4-time major champion that's not a fight he wins. Instead, he slowed everything down. Drop shots, short angles, drag Sinner side to side, make him cover court he didn't have legs left to cover. Every ball that forced one more movement, one more change of direction, was a small withdrawal from an account that was already empty. Sinner still hit some of the cleanest forehands of the tournament in that stretch, flat, heavy, when his feet were already planted. The shot-making never disappeared. The legs underneath it did. That's the separation worth understanding. His hands stayed elite. His base didn't. And this wasn't even the first time. Months earlier, at the Australian Open, a near-identical pattern started building against Elliot Spizzirri, cramping, fading, a third set slipping away in soaring heat. That day, the tournament's heat rule kicked in. The roof closed. Cahill, courtside, told him to simply survive to the break. Walk if he had to, and let the conditions reset around him. They did. Sinner came back and won in 4. In Paris, there was no roof, no heat rule activated, no reset button. Just a body that had shown this exact vulnerability before, this time with nowhere to hide from it. That's the tactical truth sitting underneath the bigger story. Sinner's game, at its best, is built on dictating terms flat, early, taking time away from the opponent before a rally even develops. It's a style that wins quickly or not at all. When points shorten, he's nearly unplayable. When matches stretch past 3 hours in heat, something underneath the surface starts to give. Paris didn't expose a tactical flaw. It exposed a physical ceiling that tactics alone can't fix. So, when people ask whether Sinner solved what happened in Paris, they're often asking the wrong question. The forehand was never broken. The serve was never broken. What's actually in question is something closer to trust, whether his own body, under sustained heat and sustained pressure, will hold up when the match goes long. That's where today's win against Norrie matters, and also where it doesn't. It matters because it shows the recovery process, whatever it's involved, reportedly including closer metabolic monitoring and training, has at least produced a player who looks sharp, fast, and confident again. The movement looked clean, the serve held up under real heat. There was no hesitation in his legs, no sign of the checking in with his own body that marked the back half of the Cerundolo match. It doesn't fully answer the question because 2 quick sets against one opponent, settled in well under 2 hours, never asked his body the hard question. Paris asked that question at the 3-hour mark, in the 4th and 5th sets, after 18 games of sustained physical strain. Today's match ended before it ever got there. This is where the psychological layer becomes as important as anything tactical. Sinner has spent his career being the player who doesn't blink, calm face, level voice, the kind of competitor who treats a break point the same as a love 40 lead. That composure is part of what makes him so hard to play. But composure under pressure and trust in your own body are 2 different forms of confidence. You can have one and still be quietly negotiating with the other. There's also the matter of what's no longer in his way. Carlos Alcaraz, the rival who's pushed Sinner further than anyone else on tour, who took him to 5 sets in last year's French Open final and forced him to find another gear he didn't know he had, is absent from Wimbledon entirely. For 2 years, that rivalry has functioned almost like a pressure valve and a mirror at once. Every match against Alcaraz forced Sinner to answer a question about his limits. Without him in the draw, Sinner doesn't have that immediate external test. He has, instead, an open road, and an open road can be a gift or it can be a trap, depending on what's actually waiting at the end of it. Djokovic remains the most dangerous name left, a 7-time champion still chasing a 25th major, still capable of grinding a match into exactly the kind of long, physical battle that Paris proved Sinner hasn't fully solved. If their paths cross in the second week, it won't just be a rivalry match. It'll be the test Norrie wasn't equipped to give him. There's a quieter piece of this worth noticing too, what Sinner's own body language has done since Paris. In the immediate aftermath, in his press conference, he was unusually plain about it. No deflection, no blaming the schedule outright. He said he didn't sleep well, that he woke up off, that sometimes a player simply doesn't have it and there's no fixing that mid-match. That kind of honesty is rare from a world number 1 in real time. It's also, in its own way, a tell. A player who's fully certain his body won't fail him again doesn't usually need to explain it that carefully. He explains it that carefully because some part of him is still working through what actually happened. Compare that to how he carried himself today. Between points against Norrie, there was none of that searching. No glance toward the bench for reassurance. No visible negotiation with his own legs. If Paris left a mark, today didn't show it on the surface. But surfaces are exactly what exhibitions are good at protecting. So the picture heading toward Monday isn't simple confidence, and it isn't lingering doubt either. It's both, sitting next to each other, waiting to see which one the tournament calls forward first. Here's the turning point, and it isn't the scoreline against Norrie. The real turning point is a date on a calendar. Friday, June 26. That's when the Wimbledon draw is made, when the bracket fills in, when Sinner finally learns who's standing across the net in round 1. Until that moment, everything we've talked about, the recovery, the heat, the 18 lost games in Paris, the clean win today, exists in a kind of suspended state. It's preparation without a destination yet. The real story doesn't start until the draw gives it an opponent and a date. That's worth sitting with, because it changes what today actually was. Not a verdict. A rehearsal for a test that hasn't been written yet. And grass complicates the question further, in a way that cuts both directions. This is the surface where Sinner has been, by his own admission, at his absolute best. Flat ball striking, low bounce, points that end in 4 or 5 shots instead of 15. It's a surface built for exactly the identity he spent years constructing. Take time away before the rally develops, finish points early. Never let a match drift into the kind of extended battle where stamina becomes the deciding factor, which is also exactly why Roland Garros was such a strange place for this particular vulnerability to surface. Clay is the slowest surface in the sport. It's built for rallies, for grinding, for matches that wear a player down over hours. If there was ever a surface where a physical collapse made some intuitive sense, it was that one. Grass should, in theory, protect him from ever needing the kind of endurance that broke down in Paris. But in theory is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Because grass still means best of 5. It still means center court in late June heat, with momentum that can swing in an afternoon. With an opponent like Djokovic, who knows exactly how to manufacture exactly the kind of long, grinding 3.5-hour contest that doesn't care what surface it's played on. The conditions that broke Sinner in Paris weren't really about clay. They were about sustained physical stress under a rising clock. Grass doesn't eliminate that. It just changes how quickly a match can get there. This is where the deeper meaning of this story actually lives, not in whether Sinner wins or loses, but in what kind of champion he turns out to be on the other side of this. There's a version of this season where Paris becomes a footnote, one rough afternoon in an otherwise dominant year, the kind every great champion eventually has and shakes off. Federer had matches like this. Djokovic has had matches like this. Even Nadal, built almost entirely out of physical resilience, had days the body simply didn't answer. None of it defined them. It became one chapter in a much longer book. But there's another version of this story, quieter and harder to say out loud, where Paris becomes the first data point in a pattern Shanghai, then Melbourne, then Paris, each one a slightly different shape of the same problem, heat and fatigue, finding him at the worst possible moment, again and again, until it stops looking like bad luck and starts looking like something his body simply does under specific conditions. Nobody on his team is saying that publicly. The checkups came back clean. The training looks sharp. But the question doesn't disappear just because nobody's asking it out loud. That's the real tension Wimbledon is going to resolve, one way or another, over the next 2 weeks. Not is Sinner good enough? Nobody seriously doubts that. The real question is whether his body can be trusted to carry that talent through 5 sets, in heat, deep into the second week, against someone who knows exactly how to make him run. Today's win matters. It's real progress, real evidence, a real signal that the recovery process has worked at least as far as 2 clean sets in real heat. But evidence isn't the same as proof, and Sinner himself seems to understand the difference better than anyone watching from the outside. That's probably why his answers about Paris have stayed so plain, so unguarded, almost stripped of the usual professional polish. He's not performing confidence for the cameras. He's still working through what actually happened in real time, the same way everyone else is. Cahill, for his part, has called it a blip. Maybe it is. Blips don't usually come with a glucose monitor strapped to the arm in training. Monday will tell us more than today did. Not because the opponent will necessarily be dangerous. The draw could hand him something gentle, an early round that asks very little. But because center court, in front of a full crowd, with a grand slam actually on the line, is the first place since Paris where the stakes will be real again. That's the environment that found the crack last time. It's also the only environment that can tell us, honestly, whether the crack is gone. Until then, all anyone has is what today gave us. A clean scoreline, a confident walk off the court. And one question, still sitting quietly underneath all of it, waiting for the moment it actually has to answer for itself.